Hi, this is Katie Burns and you are watching Live Well. Today I have a very special guest, my pastor, and I asked him to come on the show and talk about embracing joy through any season. And I asked him to talk on this topic because one of the things I really enjoy about our relationship is that he's not just behind the pulpit. We have a friendship beyond that, and I can call him anytime or text him.
And I've called you.
Yeah, and I like that because sometimes you just, want more information or even, more, I don't know, help. You often have people call you for help on different topics. But we're here today at the United Methodist Church filming, and we're just going to have a casual conversation about weathering through seasons. Sometimes difficult things come up in life, and I think something that separates us and helps us live well is embracing joy no matter what is going on. And I always like to use weather analogies, seasons, fall, winter. I think it's purposeful to think about it in that way. Often, we can even be in a drought, just feeling parched, feeling dry, and needing that water or help, which is something that you can provide to a lot of people.
I appreciate your confidence. I was just thinking it was so funny that you're using this weather and seasons metaphor. I've had people ask me before what my favorite season is, and I honestly don't have one because to me there's something special about each one. Yeah. And beauty in each one, and I don't say that to sound like a cheesy optimist, but it's true. There is something. And I'll admit, even in last year's drought, I was thinking, well, I don't have to mow this week.
That's true. So the drought was harsh.
That was
last
bad.
year, and then when the fires came, there's a lot of fear surrounding that. And I'm glad you brought it up because I was thinking during that season, it threatened, our farm, Burns Farms.
Right.
It was behind us. It was coming down the mountain, and just what do you do? Right. It would be really easy to panic, to have a lot of fear, and to hold on to that, and it disrupt your peace. And so how do you level out and say, nope, we're going to make it?
Yeah. The only way I can even relate to that is I heard a great story one time. And a guy was operating a farm, and he wanted to, a new guy had applied for work. Yeah. And he had a reference letter with him, and really all it said is, this guy sleeps through the storm. And he went, what does that mean? And so he called the guy that wrote the letter, and he says, this guy takes care of everything he can. And so when the storm hits, he knows he's already taken care of it. And so he sleeps soundly. And, especially when it comes to fear, anxiety, worry, and one of the best pieces of advice I ever had passed on to me was, you don't avoid the problem, you admit it, but you look at it, you deal with what you can deal with, and the rest, you understand, is out of your hands. Yeah. And it does help, because when you've done all you can, what else is there to do?
I think that I always think I can do more. Was it enough? How do you know when you have really done all that you can. You know, for example, something that I used to do before I got married, and thank goodness I did get married because I'm sure that it saved my life in some ways. I had these 2 horses that I've had since I was a young girl. And I would turn them out at night, you know, during the summer. And, you know, often there could be a bad storm with lightning. And I lived in fear for years that they were going to get struck by lightning and killed. And so I would run out in the middle of the night and I would check the radar to see how far that lightning was so that I wouldn't get struck. But I was running out in the middle of the night to bring my horses into the barn before getting struck by lightning. And I'm glad that I did not get struck by lightning.
Yeah.
But it was dangerous. That was so stupid. And so then I get married, and David, my husband's like, "You're not doing that." And I'm like, "They will die." He's like, "Well, then they die."
Yeah.
But that fear-driven, obviously, and me thinking, "Oh, I can do more. I can go get them." But you know, the lightning could have hit the barn.
Well, and I think that's a case where I think you have to look at your options. In a case like that, I mean, the obvious options would be, well, are they loose at night, or do I put them in the barn at night?
Right.
Okay. And obviously using this as an analogy, so I think you look at your options beforehand. You make a choice, but you have to decide with yourself that I understand this can happen with this choice. I understand this can happen with this choice. Can I live with the choice I made?
Yeah.
And, I think when you look at it that way, you are able to have peace with it. This is the choice
that I made.
And I understand what can happen.
Yeah.
That my horses could get struck by lightning out in the open or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I've accepted that.
That acceptance of your decision.
Yeah. And yes, if they get struck by lightning, I'm going to be crushed.
Yeah.
And all that.
Yeah.
But it is a choice I made. And I'm trusting that they have enough horse sense not to, go stand by the lightning rod.
Greg, let me tell you, I'm just so glad I switched to a mule because the horses did not
have
the sense to go into the barn. But my mule and donkey are in the barn.
Okay.
So I don't worry about them anymore. I mean, I've recovered from this fear, obviously, but I think that, we get wrapped up into stuff, or I know that I do, which is why I came up with this topic, is because, I can see it for myself easily, and I can see it for other people where, something comes and it really upsets the apple cart. And so, and it can be for quite a while, if you think about physical illness that people are struggling with, and, they might get bitter. And what is something or some sort of advice that you've given to people, or how have you cared for them to help them hold on to that joy and acceptance of the decisions they're making during that time?
Right. Gee, is that all? I think part of what my job is when I'm dealing with somebody that's that way, and when it happens to me too.
Yeah.
Is, to process it, and, because sometimes you're not upset about the illness. You're upset that you have to miss an event. Or if it's a long-term illness or a chronic illness, it's what you're losing in your life. Yes. Even if it's just control, or even if it's just your sense of, immortality.
Yeah.
Or if, something else happens big in your family, it's, it's, right, it sends your home into turmoil. I totally understand that.
Right, the apple cart.
And we might react by being mad at the person who really has a problem. Which is, when you really think about it, you're like, why would I be mad at that? They couldn't help it, or maybe they could, but, but that's still, you know, it's when you can identify those things,
Yeah.
I think it's much easier to get back to a place of peace.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you understand what's really going on, what it is that's really upsetting you.
Yeah.
Then you can begin to address it. It's like anything else. If you don't know what the problem is, you can't address it.
Well, I think when you're in grief and sad, a lot of it feels dark.
Yes.
And I think in the darkness, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
And so you're saying by getting to the root and addressing, you know, what it is, it helps to bring in light.
Right, and there's, you know, of course, so many different ways to do that.
Yeah.
You know, healthy ways. I better be specific.
Right.
But, you know, whether it's going to see a counselor or a pastor or a dear friend who will, and when I say friend, I mean somebody that not only is going to listen to you,
Yeah.
but has no problem telling you the truth.
Those are hard to find.
They are hard to find, and if you get one, hang on to
We
them.
could do a whole nother episode on friendship.
Yeah, but journaling helps a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah.
But, you know, any of those sorts of things that can help you process what you're going through. Because you're right, grief, and there's so many things that happen with
Yeah.
grief. And honestly, with grief, sometimes the best advice you can give somebody is, it's okay to feel bad.
Yeah.
It's okay to cry. You know, this is what it is. And this is part of the healthy process of getting over it. And sometimes people just need to know that that's okay.
Yeah.
And that they're not abnormal.
Right.
You know, it's amazing how many things we carry around in our lives. You know, we were told not to cry. You know, I was at we had an elderly member at another church who was dying, and I remember her son sitting there going, well, she wouldn't want us to cry. We don't need to cry. She's going to heaven. And I'm going, well, good for her. We're here hurting.
Yeah.
And it's okay to cry. It's part of what God gave us to deal with this. You know, and so I hated countering him, but...
Well, there's a lot. You think about some messages that we send to young men.
Yeah.
You know, big boys don't cry.
Right.
Boys don't cry. I mean, we get that message,
Yeah.
you know, and a lot of times wanting to appear tough and together and in control, you know, we skip out on some of the grieving process. And I think that you do have to grieve to get to the joy. You can't skip always. You can't always.
No.
It's not going to be, you know, when I say embracing joy throughout all seasons, it's not a continuous state of joy.
I think what somebody told me is there's a huge difference between joy and happiness.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people confuse the two and think, no, I'm supposed to be joyful. and that's not what it means at all.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, joy really speaks more of a peace and still being able to find beauty, you know,
Right.
in whatever form it pops up. You know, another quick story. I was watching this one couple, very elderly. The one, I'm not sure what his state of mind is right now, but his wife, just the way she cares for him in little things, whether it's putting on his socks or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost just started weeping because it was so beautiful to watch.
Yeah.
And man, I've never quite understood that until I stood there and watched that that day. Is here they are, both in decline, you know, and anybody who's, you know, still robust and full of life, you know, would think, gee, that's awful to be at that age. But it was gorgeous. I mean, it was just as beautiful, and what a gift to me to be able to witness it.
And I think
And I hope they appreciate it.
Well, and that goes back with what you were just saying a few minutes ago. So, you know, we're in the dark, and when we're in the dark, you've got your pastor and your friends and people that God's given us to potentially help.
Right.
So you coming in and seeing that, whereas, you know, I don't know the mindset of the husband and wife or what they were thinking, but she might have just been thinking of putting on my husband's socks.
Yeah.
I'm doing a due diligent
there
task.
was a lightness to
For
it.
her, she had it, but some people might be
no,
mundane.
some people can resent it
and you come in and you're like, I see beauty. And I think that's the value of the light, that, you know, God is kind of sprinkling around you, saying, here's some people that see it from another way. And are you noticing the beauty in this? Like for her, she was actually joyful in her task, and that's why you saw the light.
But not everybody is. You're right.
Not everybody is.
And that's why another set of eyes is always good.
Well, you know, you think about moms, and how many times do they complain about, if I have to put your shoes on one more time,
Right.
you know, and you know, or I'll read some blogs where women are trying to take joy in folding clothes, getting down to, you know, more of the mundane task of life, and they're not seeing it in another way. And that's why community can really come in and help you shift your mindset.
And honestly, I'm glad you mentioned the folding the clothes.
You don't take joy
in folding and clothes. No, I remember reading, it was, I don't remember whether it was Mother Teresa said this or one of her sisters. But was talking, you know, somebody had asked, how in the world do you pray? You guys are so busy. And they said, you can make washing the dishes a holy moment. You know, you can pray while you're doing these things. You know, it doesn't have to be this thing I'm doing and it's so busy and I got to do all it.
A reverent period.
You can bring it, yes. You know, you can bring it to God, make it holy, you know, and use that time to connect with God. And I think that's another thing that well, really, I mean, let's face it, joy, peace, it starts with your relationship with God.
Right.
I mean, I really couldn't tell you how people who don't know God, I don't know where they would get it from.
Well, I think it's Band-Aids.
Okay.
You know, as a counselor, I do have to give out a lot of Band-Aids, because some people are not interested in my viewpoints, all of my viewpoints. You know, and in school we are taught not to impose our religious views. That's actually an ethical violation. Now, you know, I work at Christian Counselor Cooperative in Chattanooga, so people are coming in and understanding that, you know, that is part of what goes on here, is that we can share about our Christian values. So it's not off the table, but in other areas where people are saying, help me, help me, help me, I have to give Band-Aids. Like music. Which is lovely, you know, and they are helpful, or, you know, exercises and activities that I have, you know, therapeutic. But I don't, the reason I wanted to work as a Christian counselor, or at a place where I could share my values, is because I don't think they're curative without God. I don't think there's a lot of healing that can go on mentally, physically, you know, without God, without at least seeking Him and having Him support you in all ways.
And I agree with you, but I also want to throw in a caveat, and I hope we're not getting off topic. I think we also have to be aware that, and we talked about this earlier, that so many times we treat God as a Band-Aid.
Like, help me, help me, help me, Lord?
Well, or just pray about it. Okay, and it's almost like they're, you know, we put your God Band-Aid on. You're fine now. No, I'm not. You know, there's still stuff that needs work.
You know, sometimes I feel inhibited saying to people, I will pray for you, because I feel like it's become a disingenuous comment. I feel like people, you know, I feel like it's just something that people say, especially in social media, praying for you, or people put out, pray for me. It's like, well, what about? I mean, do you have a problem?
Sure, I see that all the time too.
And I don't want to be, you know, if someone's going through a hard time, I like to say, what specifically can I pray for you, so that we can meet together on that.
But you are also in the wondrous privilege of being able to enter into someone's trouble and help guide them. And so you do get to do more. Sorry.
You do too. I mean,
but yeah, I just
but a friend
I hear so
can
many
do
times
that. A friend can do that.
A friend can do that. But I hear so many times somebody says, "Well, just take it to the Lord in prayer." And
you should.
You know,
technically,
you should.
Yeah.
But that ain't the end of the struggle. And especially when you're talking about somebody who's got a very serious problem, whether it's an addiction or something else, we still want to throw that God Band-Aid too many times. And, you know, it's like, well, you gave your life to God. You shouldn't have a problem anymore. It doesn't work that way too often.
Well, no, he promises there will be trouble.
Well,
God,
there's work to do. You
have to do.
And I think.
Say more about that work.
Okay.
Pause you, because people, that's a concept that when we're talking about joy, and like I'm saying,
right,
you know, coupling with the work, we got to do.
Yes, we do, and we're expected to. And you know, when I talk about it starts with God, it starts with your relationship to God, but every relationship takes work. And I think so many people have this idea, well, I went to worship, I'm good.
Check.
And it just takes work. And I think within that relationship, to really have continuing peace and joy, it takes the kind of work that brings growth. You always need to be growing. And that gets hard over a lifetime, because, you know, at some point you've tapped out your favorite resource and you need others.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it really does take all that. I thought one of the neatest things I ever saw was this one woman. She was 94 years old, had an eye patch. And I was over at her house one day and sitting in her living room, and of course she had the car headlight lamp set up because, you know, her vision was so bad. But two things in that room stood out to me. She had, one, a treadmill, which, unlike most of ours, didn't have any clothes hung on it. She was using it.
Good.
And on the little coffee table right next to her chair where she sat with this really bright light was a stack of books. And she was just working her way through them. She was, and I asked her about it, and she said, "Oh, I'm gonna get through those." You know, and they were not easy books. You know, I mean, there was theological books, there were history books, there were current events books, but she was still learning.
Yeah.
You know, and she did not make it through all those books. She died within, you know, a couple of weeks.
Oh, no.
But
she died trying.
What determination. She was going to learn until she went out.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, I mean, that stuck in my head. But I think it's true. And whether it's growing through your spiritual practices of prayer, and again, to me, one of the greatest disservices I think we tend to do in churches is we tend to teach a very one-sided prayer. You know, it's us talking instead of listening. You know, we got to do both. So I think it takes that sort of time, and those take time to really sit and be in God's presence. But boy, will they change you.
Yeah.
That's when you really realize God is there, that you're loved. And that's key for joy. Yeah. You know, continuing to struggle, to learn, to grow, to challenge yourself through service to other people. You know, all those are the pieces that keep us growing, that will keep joy in your life. And yeah, I hardly recommend them. And
well, you could join Ruth Burton and I on book club day.
Oh, okay.
We've been reviewing books.
Okay.
And talking about books, and I always bring those mental health books, and she brings the entertaining ones. But I do that because I'm in agreement. I think that there's so much that we don't know, and like the community, I consider books part of my community because that's an educational voice
Right.
that's always positive. I pick positive, educational Christian books coming in my direction, giving me tools, accompanying it with prayer, give me wisdom, because I feel like if you ask God for wisdom, it will come from all areas. And so thus seeking the growth through a potential winter or through a potential drought helps to hold on to that joy because you see and hear hope and positivity from what you're surrounding yourself with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what inspired it about that, but when you talk about the seasons, I think the other part of that is acceptance of, I guess, the reality of a situation. Look, I'm not 20 anymore.
You're not?
No, I have to.
I'm not either.
I have to accept the age I am.
Yeah.
Just the same way, it does me no good if I sit in the middle of fall and wish it was spring.
Right.
It's only when I accept that this is fall that you really open yourself to the beauty of what's around you. If that makes sense. Same with your different stages of life,
Right.
whether it's your age or events within life. If you accept it, yes, this is what's happened. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
But I think that's another prayer trick I have learned over the years. If you ever sit down to prayer, I think one of the best things you can do just to start with that prayer is just say to God, God, I'm really scared right now. Or I'm really angry. Or I don't know what I'm feeling, but it's got me out of sorts. I think a lot of times when you just start there, again, it kind of goes back to admitting your problem. But when you start with that, man, you're just laying it out on the table with God.
Yeah.
And now you can talk about it.
I think that's really valuable information. And unfortunately, our time is up for today.
Oh my gosh.
We have to close. I know it goes by so fast. I hope this has been helpful for you guys at home. And this week, I hope you will take time to find joy and live well. Thanks.